Привет всем! С вами я, Jenny, College Russian. This is my live stream. I'm going to call it Tolstoy Tuesday because I'm going to be doing more live streams on Tuesdays. I had a change in my schedule. So today we are talking about possibly my most favorite work of Russian literature, and that is Anna Karenina. If you are going to read Tolstoy, I would definitely recommend starting with Anna Karenina because War and Peace, even though it's considered the more classic, it's harder to get hooked on War and Peace than it is on Anna Karenina. That's my personal opinion. Maybe men feel differently because War and Peace is very much about war, obviously. And Anna Karenina is more focused on kind of the female experience in the 19th century. But anyway, I think Anna Karenina is just one of the most brilliantly written books of all time. However, I do have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Tolstoy. So let me know how you feel about Tolstoy. I uh, I love Tolstoy on the one hand, in that I love his literature. I think he's a brilliant, brilliant writer. He understands the female experience extremely well. But I have a hate relationship with him because he actually was not very nice to women in his life, and he was not very nice to his wife. And so that's a little bit of hypocrisy, if you ask me. But that's for another video. So today we're just going to focus on this most brilliant novel of all time, Anna Karenina. So a little quick Russian literature humor. One of my students shared this with me one time, and it's if you compare all the different literatures of the world, English literature is I will die for honor, French literature, I will die for love, and let's see, which literature is that? American literature, I will die for freedom, and then Russian literature, I will die. And that's exactly what I love about Russian literature is it's very oh, thank you, Erin, you agree with my assessment of Tolstoy. Good. I have Erin, have you read the Kreutzer Sonata? That's when I after reading the Kreutzer Sonata, that's where I became very angry at Tolstoy because it's very misogynistic, and it really kind of pissed me off, but he still is definitely one of the most brilliant writers of all time. He has the ability to get you inside the head of the person that he's writing about, and it's just incredible. You end up getting attached to these characters as if they're your friends. So Anna Karenina is one of the best places to start. So yes, I highly recommend first read Anna Karenina, then read Death of Ivan Ilyich, Смерть Ивана Ильича, and then there's another short story called Семейное счастье. It translates a little bit different into English. Sometimes it's called Happily Ever After. I don't know. In Russian, it's called Семейное счастье, like family happiness. Again, it's just so brilliant the way he can get into the psyche of a human, and all of his literature to this day is still relevant. You can read this however many years later, and every single person is going to relate to somebody in his novels. So today we're going to read the first kind of lines and paragraph. And of course, this is one of the most famous first lines of literature around the world, not even just Russian literature, but famous first lines of literature. So there's our Russian meme about Russian literature. And that kind of dark mentality is precisely what I love about Russian literature. Like when I read Jane Austen, I kind of like puke in my mouth a little bit because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, come on, like life is not like that, you know? So I really love Russian literature because it's just more dark. And my favorite thing about Russian literature is it very, very rarely ends happy. And that makes me happy. I know it's dark, but I do love it. And then here's another funny meme about Russian literature, which, yeah, if you don't know Russian, the first time I remember I tried to read Dostoevsky when I was 17, before I knew anything about Russian culture, I was so confused. I was thinking like, geez, they're introducing a new people, a new person, a new character, like every other paragraph, because I didn't understand how Russian names work. So here you see this is all the same person, but he goes by Ivan, Vanyechka, Ivanich, right? And so Russian literature is so confusing if you don't have somebody like helping you and explaining like, no, this is all the same person. So yeah, so a lot of books nowadays, they have kind of a key at the beginning to help you understand who's who in the work of literature. So let's talk about Anna Karenina. So published in 1878. Again, it came out in 8 different parts. And some people say Tolstoy is very wordy because he was getting paid by the page or by the word, but whatever. That was the style in the time at the time. I mean, Victor Hugo, Dickens, all of them, they all were very verbose, so that's okay. But that's actually what makes Tolstoy brilliant, is he goes so in depth on every single one of his characters that you get so attached to them. Um, so what's really amazing about Anna Karenina is I think this was very ahead of its time in that it had a very complex lead female character. Like, that's crazy for those times. The females were always in the background, and they were the Madonna whore complex, right? They were either pure, just pure, 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 or they were a total whore. Or like if you have Sonia from Dostoevsky, she was kind of both and one. But we've never really seen Anna Karenina. We've never seen a character that's so nuanced, and we don't know if we like her or not. And it's just so fascinating. I have a question here from Honeying Loon. How much has the Russian language changed since the Tolstoy and Dostoevsky were writing? You need to learn lots of old words. Great question. So as you can see in this original, as you can see here, look at how his last name was spelled. So nowadays, our genitive adjectives and endings are Tolstovo, Tolstovo. So that's changed, as you can see there. And then notice this extra little on the end of Roman. This was called the yer, and it indicated anything that was hard. So nowadays, all we have left is just the Makiznak, the soft sign. But in the old days, you would have the Makiznak and the Yer, which was like essentially every single thing that ended in a consonant, you had to distinguish whether it was a soft consonant or a hard consonant, and the Yer distinguished that. In fact, I'll leave in the description below where I talk about how the language has changed over time. But no, you really should be able to go through these once you understand that just don't pay attention to certain letters, like the yer on the end of Raman, the yer right here on the end of fu. Once you know to not pay attention to those, then you should be able to understand it. The only difference is anytime you're reading something from 19th century, there's going to be a lot of words describing items that were in the home or workers that were in the home, and we'll be talking about those today, that we don't really have in we don't really have a lackey, right? I remember one time I looked up the word lackey. I looked it up in English, and the English translation was lackey. And I'm like, well, I have no idea what a lackey is, so that doesn't help me any. Because we don't really have those kinds of servants and workers in the home anymore. So that's the main thing that's different. But I would say it is as understandable once you know how the alphabet changed. It's completely understandable. It's not like doing Chaucer, for example, in English. It's very much understandable. Um, so Erin says she's reading something by Ivan Bunin, and it definitely feels different than when I read things published more recently. And it's certainly all very different from modern spoken Russian. Yes, and also too, a lot of times you're going to get dialects in some of the older languages. From some of Tolstoy's stuff from when he was down south in the Caucasus, you're going to see some different dialects as well. But no, you really should be able to go through. And in the same way that Dickens sounds a little old-fashioned now, some of the Russian stuff will sound old-fashioned. Big thing, though, is when you read Tolstoy, you better know some French because, it's translated for you in most translations. But the whole first page of War and Peace is in French. The whole thing is in French, and then it's annotated down at the bottom. But because that's how the aristocrats lived, was they were speaking French. Pushkin grew up speaking French. It was only with his nanny that he would speak actual Russian. So that was again a reality of the 19th century in Russia. So here we go. We are going to talk about. Here's a couple more things I'm going to talk about. So this is the whole section I'm going to read. And we know that the first line of Anna Karenina is famously, all happy families are alike. But look at this little thing up here. And we're going to talk about this because this is key for understanding this novel and how Tolstoy feels toward Anna Karenina and the big debate surrounding it. So we're going to read this famous first line and then this whole paragraph here. And sure enough, as Annie Ying was saying, there's a lot of words from the 19th century that we don't really use anymore, but you'll still be able to understand what's going on here. Okay, so real quick, I want to point out this little line here. Всё смешалось в доме Облонских. So this in Russian is what's called a крылатые слова, so like winged words. Winged words are kind of like idioms that come from literature. Здравствуйте, привет, я... Oh, wait, I can do this in Greek. One second. Yasu. Yasu. Tikanis. That's all I can do in Greek. Anyway, so So this famous word, "Снес мешалось в доме Облонских." This is called a крылатая фраза. And in Russian, if you can use крылатые слова in your everyday speech, you sound very educated. Just like somebody in English, if they can quote Shakespeare, for example. And a lot of these phrases we use in everyday speech, and if you're not very educated, you don't know what was the origin of it. So, for example, do you know where to be or not to be? Where did that come from, right? Or um, let's see, they call me Ishmael, right? Or just kind of different little jokes. Oh, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, right? We hear those kinds of things, but not everybody, even native English speakers, we don't know where they come from. So this phrase, "Все смешалось в доме Облонских," is one of those phrases that a lot of Russians say, and they don't realize that it comes from Anna Karenina. So what does that mean? If you say that in everyday speech, "Все смешалось в доме Облонских," it means everything is out of control. Everything is turned upside down. So here's some memes you can see. Look at this one here. Все смешалось в доме Облонских. Коты, дети и завтрак. Like, see, they're all mixed up together. The cats, the baby, and the milk are all there's a big mess, a big pile of everything. So anytime like something's totally chaotic and everything's all over the place, we would say "Все смешалось в доме Облонских," and that comes from Anna Karenina. So we are going to talk all about that today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this first line is actually from the Bible. Let me see, let me switch it up here. This first line is actually from the Bible. It's Old Church Slavonic. And it says, and I probably won't pronounce this correctly because I don't know Old Church Slavonic, but it says, "Мне отмщение и аз воздам." Okay, so this means, this is from Romans, I can't remember, I think it's chapter 12, and I don't know the verse exactly, but отмщение is like revenge, right? So мне отмщение и аз воздам. This is an old word for yeah. So to me, it is to take revenge, and I will give it out. So in English, the way we translate this is, "Vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord." And that's how you would see it translated in the Bible. Vengeance is mine. I don't know if I'm spelling that right. Is mine, and then thus saith, again, this is old English, the Lord. Good. So this is key. Do we think that Tolstoy wants God to take revenge on Anna in this book? This is where I'm really torn. Does Tolstoy feel compassion for Anna, or does he feel contempt for her? Does he feel like she deserves to be punished? That is very much the question that I ask myself when I read this book. And I've read it many, many times over the years. I feel like my lighting is not great on that, but okay, so that's actually the real first line. Okay, good, thank you that I'm echoing, but so that's actually the real first line of Anna Karenina. Is "Vengeance is mine, thus saith the Lord." And again, that's going to be key because how do we know? It kind of shows us how does Tolstoy feel towards Anna. If you've read the book, you know she ends up cheating on her husband, falls in love with a younger man, and on the one hand, he shows us like we kind of come to love Anna and feel sorry for her. On the other hand, you know, we kind of judge her. We kind of think she's not very nice and she's sloppy and so again, we don't know. It's hard to know how did Tolstoy feel towards her. Okay, let's get going. So here we go. Все счастливые семьи похожи друг на друга. Каждая несчастливая семья несчастлива по-своему. You probably know this line. All happy families are alike, or literally in Russian, similar to each other, is what you're literally saying. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Okay, so let's do the English grammar, or the translation of each individual word. We've got all happy families similar, and because I'm just going to use the original, or the literal translation. I've also seen this as одинаково as well. Similar to each other. Oh, I know why I'm echoing, 'cause that mic isn't muted. Okay, hopefully that made the sound better. Uh, okay, so all happy families, and then every unhappy family is unhappy, 'cause then that's a short form adjective. По-своему is a really hard word to translate, but it means oh, yay, it's 'cause I had 2 mics going, so that was the problem. По-своему is in one's own way. Okay, grammar time. Here we go. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, here we go. Все счастливы. So this is plural nominative. Nominative because it's the subject of the sentence. We've got plural of счастливы, and then we've got plural. So this is all plural nominative because it's the subject of the sentence. Then we have what's called a short form adjective, and it's a plural version. That's why we're only getting this one letter versus over here on a long adjective, we get 2 letters. Okay, short form adjective. Друг на друга. This is a great phrase. We are practicing this in my this semester in my college classes. Друг на друга, and we're getting accusative case because of this na. We're getting the on the end because it's humans, so it's accusative slash genitive. So друг друга, if your preposition goes in the middle. Они говорят друг о друге, whatever preposition, and then the second friend is the one that changes. Not both friends don't change, only the second. So друг на друга. All happy families are similar to each other. Каждая, we've got a feminine, meaning every. Несчастливая семья, another feminine because семья is feminine. And these are all nominative cases. Okay, now we've got another short form adjective. Short form adjectives are really hard for people to grasp. But what I like to think of as a short form adjective is doing is it's playing 2 roles. It's both the adjective plus the word is or slash are. It's combined together. So there's no is. There's no is happening here. So that's why we use a short form adjective. Несчастлив. So if we get a short form adjective, it's this. There's a little is slash are plus an adjective. Okay. По-своему. What's happening here is it's the possessive pronoun свой, and it's getting dative case. Dative case. Like that. По-своему. По-своему. Okay, here we go. Got lots happening here. Okay. And I recommend if you guys want to pull up a text online, you guys can start looking at what the English translation of all of this is. Okay, here we go. Famous крылатые слова, those winged words that means total chaos happening, right? Всё смешалось в доме Облонских. Okay, so everything was all mixed up in the house of the Oblonsky. Stепа Oblonsky is Anna Karenina's brother. Okay, so let's find out why they're in a total state of chaos. Жена узнала, что муж был в связи с бывшей в их доме француженкой губернаткой. Okay, so let's go little by little there. All was mixed up in the house of the Oblonskys. Of Oblonskys, there's no apostrophe there. The wife, her name is Dolly. Okay, so in the novel, her name is Dolly. Жена узнала, found out that her husband, and that her is implied, husband was, связи is a euphemism. It means he hooked up with, right? So he was, it literally means in connection, and then we can infer what kind of connection that was with the former in their house. The former in their house. French governess. Again, we don't really talk about governesses in everyday speech these days, but there's an example of something you'd see in old language. Okay, so Жена узнала, что муж был в связи с бывшей в их доме, француженкой гувернанткой. All right, we've got something grammar happening here. We've got a neuter, right? Yup. And then this is the past tense neuter of несчастный, meaning to get mixed up. So we've got neuter happening. In the house, we've got prepositional, right? Because in the house, the original of that poem. Oblonsky, we've got an of, so that tells us automatically we are going to need genitive, and it's a plural. And did you know last names get cases as well? В доме Путиных, for example. В доме Oblonsky. And so, yeah, last names get cases as well. Вот, жена, this is nominative, and it's feminine. Узнала, this is the past tense of узнать, and it's the feminine version because жена is feminine. Что? If you see a mid-sentence word что, it's a that, most likely. Most likely it's a that. That confused some of my students. So that, husband, привет всем, всем, один, всем, welcome. So this one is nominative. This is the past tense of быть, and it's masculine because of the husband. Again, here we have another in, so we're gonna get prepositional of связь. The original of that is связь, and it's a feminine. So did you know that feminines, if they have a mягкий знак, when they go into prepositional case, they get an и. В кровати, в тетради. Мягкий знак on the end of a feminine in prepositional case gets и. Okay, here we're getting some old-fashioned language, and I'll point it out to you. С. Okay, so in this case, with a with, we're gonna get an instrumental. But look at this ending. This is not modern instrumental ending. This is so the original of this was бывшая, and in modern Russian, this would be a yay ending. But this is very typical in old Russian and in present day Ukrainian. This kind of ending. See, here it is again right here. That's a very typical in Old Russian for your feminine instrumental endings. But you don't use those so much today unless it's in music. So, бывший, and by the way, on Thursday, I'm releasing a video about these kinds of words. They're called причастия, or participles, adjectives that are made from verbs. It's gonna be a super fun lesson because it's gonna make your brain explode like crazy. Okay, в их доме, here we have a prepositional again. The original was dom. Same thing as up here, в доме. Okay, and also make sure third person, их, его, and ее, they don't change for cases if they're describing a possessive. Okay, хорошо. Француженькой. Okay, so the original of this would have been француженка. And it's getting instrumental with a fancy old ending. That ой. Okay, гувернанткой, original of this would be just гувернантка, and that one didn't get the old ending. It got just regular instrumental. Instrumental feminine. Okay, next part. So, Dolly, жена, the wife of Styopa, the guy that cheated, found out that he cheated with their French governess, and now their house is in a state of chaos. So when she found this out, она объявила мужу, что не может жить с ним в одном доме. Положение это продолжалось уже третий день и мучительно чувствовалось. We'll stop there. Okay. So she, what's the word? Объявила, declared. She declared to her husband that she can't live with him in the same house. This is probably gonna be translated into English as the same house, but we'll literally translate this as in one house. So they can't live together in the same house. Положение, this condition or arrangement, I'm gonna say arrangement, this arrangement, and let me know if you don't agree with that translation of положение. Oh, Положение, because that's you used to say that about women when they were pregnant. What's that called? Condition, yeah, condition or положение, situation. I can't remember. I can't think of how to nicely translate that into English. So this arrangement so this arrangement continued, продолжалось. Уже is an intensifier here, but it can be well, it can also mean, спасибо, за комплимент. It can also mean already as well. 3rd day, so this has now been going on for 3 days, and torturously okay, so we'll stop there. So, grammar here, try and start identifying before I get to it, start identifying what was the original of all these words. И объявила the original was объявить, this is the feminine past tense. Mужу, the original was муж, and we're getting dative case because you declare to somebody, say something to somebody. Что не может, this is the he, she conjugation of, мочь, okay? Мочь, to be able to. Жить, straightforward, that's an infinitive. С ним, right? This is instrumental case because of с. Вот. In one house. So look at this. Even the word один gets cases. Even the word один gets cases. If you're interested in that, I have a beautiful worksheet that I made. I don't know. Куда поставить лайк, Jason? Я не знаю куда. Я никогда не была на той стороне. I've never been on your side of these live streams, and I don't think I can like my own live stream, so, okay, so let's see. Третий день в одном доме. What I was gonna say is if you want a worksheet, I have a really beautiful table and worksheet for declension of those weird little words that you didn't know need cases. So if you wanna email me collegerussian@gmail.com, I'll happily send you that worksheet. В одном доме, so we're getting prepositional case because of the в. So the original would be один, and then obviously the original is dom. We keep seeing this phrase over and over again. Положение, nobody suggested a good translation for that, so I'm gonna stay with arrangement. Положение это, this is a neuter, and it's in nominative case because nothing's being done to it, it's just the subject of the sentence. And the это is describing the положение, and that's why it's also a neuter. The original is продолжаться, and we're getting past tense neuter because of положение being a neuter. Уже, again, уже is sometimes hard to translate, but nothing's happening to it. Третий день. When you talk about how long duration, you're getting accusative case. Продолжалось неделю. Неделю. So that one changed because it was a feminine singular, but третий день is a masculine, so it doesn't need to change in accusative. Продолжалось уже третий день, so it's now going on its 3rd day. И мучительно, this one's an adverb, and we know that because of just the single o on the end. Okay, so yeah, adverb. The original of it would have been a full adjective like that looking, but it's an adverb. So it has been going on torturously. So it's been going on 3rd day. И чувствовалось и самими супругами, и всеми членами семьи, и домочадцами. Все члены семьи и домочадцы чувствовали cliffhanger. Так, so let's go through this bit by bit. Start anticipating how you would translate these words. Чувствовалось. Чувствовалось. It was felt. It was felt by. Who is it being felt by? And then we're going to get instrumental case. By, this doesn't make sense. So by the spouses themselves, by Dolly and Styopa, Oblonsky, the husband and wife, but also not just the husband and wife, but all the members of the family, so all their children. And then domachadцы, this is one that we don't really have in current language, but it means the household. Everybody who worked for or in the household. I doubt very many of you people, unless you're super rich, have a household with employees, right? So that's an example of something that's very much in a period of time. So домочадцы is the household. I'd be interested to know, может быть, русские зрители, вы знаете, какой здесь у нас корень? Что такое чад? Мне интересно. Я знаю, что такое дом, но мне интересно, что такое чад и что за корень? И, может быть, и другие однокоренные слова. Мне интересно, я не знаю. Okay? Then we've got все члены, all members of the family. Again, we're getting the same thing repeated as up above, so that'll be simple to analyze the grammar there. And household felt. So up here we had a was felt because it's a reflexive. And down here we have just a felt. They felt it because it's not reflexive. Okay? Грамматика, грамматика, грамматика. Чувствовалось. The original of this was чувствовается. And that's a reflexive verb. I can let you know more about that if you look at my channel for reflexive verbs. I have a whole video devoted to them. Samimi. This is original Sami, but we're getting instrumental case because by. Who was feeling that? It was felt by the spouses. The original of this is супруг, but we're getting instrumental plural. Okay? And then we've got все. Again, that beautiful worksheet that I have, it has a beautiful chart on how to decline the word all. How do you put it in all the different cases? So if you want to email me, collegerussian@gmail.com, I'll send over that worksheet for you. И всеми членами, again, we've got instrumental plural of the family. The original of this was семья, but because it's getting genitive case, we change that ending. Genitive feminine. И домочадцами. The original of this is just right here. Домочадцы. And we're getting instrumental because it was felt by them. So instrumental, and that's a plural. All the members, okay, that's all nominative. Of the family, same thing here. Feminine, genitive, goes to семьи. И домочадцы, nominative again. And you know what? I just realized I may be pronouncing this wrong because I've never even spoken it out loud before. I've only ever read it in books. So who knows? By the way, if you ever want to look up word stress, oh, somebody's writing in the интересно, спасибо вам за одобрение, Nikitich. So it's talking about like чадо was the old way of saying like a child or something. Отпрыск, дитя, ребенок. Yeah, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. So great. So nominative. Again, I don't know if I'm even pronouncing this word. I didn't even double check. If you ever check the word on a word, it's usually in most dictionaries. But my go-to place is Wiki Slavar, like everything I ever wanted to know about Russian. Original of this was чувствовать, and we're getting the plural past tense. Так, next. Чувствовали, что нет смысла. That's a great phrase. Great phrase. Just in everyday speech. That's a great phrase to use. Что нет смысла в их сожительстве, и что на каждом постоялом дворе случайно сошедшиеся люди более связаны между собой, чем они. Okay, this is a huge sentence. We've got to break it down into small parts. So, что нет смысла. There is no point. That's a great phrase you can say. Нет смысла. Зачем? Зачем ты это делаешь? Нет смысла. There's no point doing that. Okay? That there's no point in their cohabitation and that на каждом постоялом дворе in every this is a hard thing that we don't really have as much nowadays, but it means like a guest house, essentially where the members of the household would live, not the family itself, but where the members of the household would live, and that's постоялый. Случайно, accidentally Сошедшийся. Okay. If this word scares you, you need to come back on Thursday and see my video about participles. Ooh, this is a crazy word. It's an adjective, if that blows your mind, okay? This is an adjective. And the original was actually сошедшиеся. Oh, oh, it's already there. Okay, so this is actually formed from sai okay, I spelled that wrong. From the verb "sightis," coming together. So that's an adjective formed from this verb. It's called a participle, причастие по-русски. And so it doesn't even translate to English. So people who accidentally came together, the people look at how many words we have to use in English to translate that. That's ridiculous. People who just by chance came together people. Okay, so I'm not even gonna try and translate that one because it's just a participle, and you'll understand what a participle is when you come back on Thursday to watch my video. Okay, more connected, связанные amongst themselves. I'm gonna say amongst here. Connected to each other amongst themselves, then they okay. So here we go, grammar. Что нет смысла. So the original of this is смысл, and it's a masculine, which is why we get this "а" in genitive case. Why did we get genitive case? Because there is none. There is no point. Нет смысла в их сожительстве. And then remember the word there, his and her, meaning a possessive, they never change. For gender or cases, they never change. They only have one version. Again, if you want a worksheet on that, I have a great worksheet on that one too. So, cohabitation, the original of this just had an "o" on the end, and this is getting prepositional case because of "в." So there's no point in their cohabitation. There's no point in them living together. And that на каждом, the original of this is каждый, and we're getting prepositional masculine because двор is masculine. Same thing. The original was стояли, there's our prepositional ending right there. Boom. And then here's our prepositional ending, the original of this word meaning being двор. Так. Nowadays, двор can mean just a yard. Случайно, this is an adverb. Accidentally. Okay. And then again, the original of this was "sightis," to come together. And this is participle. Come back on Thursday. Check my channel on Thursday to figure out what that means. Люди, nominative case, связаны. Here we have another short form adjective. And it's a plural form. Okay, между собой. The original of this would be себя, and this is the instrumental version of себя. So they're more connected amongst themselves than they. Oh, I already translated that. Чем они. Вот. Okay, almost done. Hang in there with me. You're learning lots of new words. Hopefully you learned that great phrase. Нет смысла. Нет смысла. Так. So the workers, essentially the people, the household workers, were more connected to each other than Stепа and Dolly and the children. Okay, чем члены семьи и домочадцы Облонских. I'm not going to translate that. We've done that. Жена не выходила из дома не выходила из своих комнат. Жена не выходила из своих комнат. Мужа третий день не было дома. Дети бегали так, okay, so let's go through here. The wife didn't exit or go out from look at this, своих комнат, her rooms. She had plural rooms. That's how big the house was. Okay, so from her rooms. Husband, third day now, we're going on the third day, wasn't at home. Okay, the children ran And then remember this tool because 'cause it'll connect to the next page. Okay, grammar. Here we go. So, wife, she's nominative, feminine. Не выходила. The original of this is выходить, meaning to exit. These are my video on prefixed verbs of motion. This will make a lot more sense to you. Из своих комнат. Okay, so the original of this would have been свои комнаты, but we're getting genitive plural. So we get these crazy 0 endings. Genitive plural. Feminine genitive plural, they end in a consonant. They get a 0 ending. Super crazy. Okay, why is мужа? See if you can read ahead to the sentence and see if you can figure out муж is getting genitive case. Why? Why is муж getting genitive case? That makes no sense. Why is муж getting genitive case? See if you can figure it out. I'll give you just a second to read the whole sentence. Why are we saying it sounds like he's the subject of the sentence in English, right? He wasn't at home. How do you talk about not having things or not being somewhere in Russian? So look at this. So мужа третий день не было дома. Вот. So we're saying there was none of the husband. So when you didn't have something, you don't have something, it gets genitive case. Even if it's a person, it gets genitive case. Okay, so genitive because of absence, right? He wasn't there. There was none of him. Today's day, for those of you who don't know, is a masculine. And then this is our set phrase for when you didn't have something. Не было. There was none of the husband at home. And then дома is a set phrase as well. Back in the old days when I lived in Moscow, in 2003, any of my Russian friends, they'd have to call and talk to my хозяйка, my host mom, and they'd have to say, "Здравствуйте, Татьяна Михайловна, Janie дома?" Is Janie at home? I know that's hard for you young people to understand because everybody has cell phones now. But back in the old days, you would have to call and ask if somebody is at home. Так, очень хорошо. Дети, they're nominative plural because they're the subject of the sentence. And then this comes from the verb бегать. Multi-directional running. They were running all around. They were running all around. По, I'm going to guess that the next thing on the next page is going to have dative case. Just based on my years of studying Russian, I'm pretty sure we're going to see some dative case here in just a second. Let's check it out. Okay, 2 more pages. Stick with me. You are reading your first Russian novel. You should be very proud of yourself. Так, cool. Sure enough, we've got dative case. Look at that. Всему дому, как потерянные, англичанка поссорилась с экономкой и написала записку приятельнице, прося приискать ей новое место. Okay, let's break this down. Okay, всему дому. So the kids were running all around the house. Okay, the kids were running all around the house like lost, like children who were lost. And this is again a причастие, like a participle. Come on Friday and you'll find out what that means. Anglicanka, see if you can identify what nationality that is. And again, in 19th century, this was very common to have French people, German nannies, Italian architects. They were bringing in a lot of people from Europe to teach their children. So the English argued with Ekonomka is the housekeeper. Like if you can think back to Downton Abbey. Oh, what was her name? Geez, I can't remember what her name is, but essentially the lady that keeps track of everybody at Downton Abbey. So this is like the head housekeeper kind of thing. Housekeeper, and wrote a note to her acquaintance, maybe? Her acquaintance. Maybe I'm getting that mixed up with Polish. But I'm pretty sure that means like an acquaintance, like a friend kind of thing. Prosia, asking. Oh, this is a idea, the video I just put on about verbal adverbs when you're doing something and it gets an ing. Asking her to look for her a new place of employment, essentially, a new place of employment. Okay, here we go. Вот. Хорошо. По всему дому dative case, and these are masculine. And sure enough, see how that всему is declining? Feel free to email me if you want my beautiful, beautiful worksheet and the beautiful, charts that go with it. I will happily send that over. I've already got a PDF of it. I'll just send to you real fast. So we've got dative masculine because of the pool that we had right over here. The children were running all around по всему дому, как потерянные. So I'm actually going to teach you. Yes, we can say that this is an adjective, but the original of this this comes from a verb, and that's what makes it a participle. Is an adjective that is formed from a verb. Let me read it. Потерять, which means to lose something. So the children were running around the house like somebody lost them, like nobody was keeping track of them, right? So they were lost. Anglichanka, this is nominative, he's the one doing the verb. Поссорилась. The original of this is поссориться. So she got into an argument with, the original of this is эконом, not экономика, экономка, экономка, and we're getting instrumental feminine. И написала, this is perfective of написать, and it's past feminine. Russian past tense is the best thing in the whole world. Написала записка, a note, right? So she wrote a note. Oh, by the way, this is accusative because she did something to the note. She wrote it, and it's a feminine. Приятельнице. So she's doing this. This is dative because she's writing to her. So the original of this would be приятельница. Приятельница. Oh, triple act, how exciting. Yeah, and the original of this was the verb просить. Check out my video that I published last Thursday. Uh, uh, Добрыня Никитич спрашивает, откуда у меня такой большой словарный запас? How do I have such a huge vocabulary? I need to remind you, I've been studying Russian for 20 years. So, and I watch Russian TV. I listen to Russian podcasts. I read Russian news. I studied Russian literature in college. I wish I was studying Russian literature right now. That's part of why I'm doing these live streams, is to scratch that itch that I have. But I think it's just time, right? When you spend time with a language and you're curious and you aren't satisfied to just see a new word and not look it up in the dictionary, you'll just learn over time. I think time on task. So, может быть, скажите, пожалуйста, Добрыня, если вы меня поняли на английском. Спасибо. Я только что заметила, что я все это говорила на английском, простите. Так, okay. So, asking, просить, to ask for something. By the way, what's the difference between спросить and просить? Who knows the difference? There's a huge difference. What is the difference? You're going to leave it in the comments. I'm not going to tell you. What is the difference? I have to correct even native speakers on this sometimes. The difference between спросить and просить. Or, sorry, попросить as well. So it really should be попросить versus спросить. What's the difference? Спросить, спрашивать. What is the difference between these two versions of asking? Оставьте комментарий, если вы знаете, в чем разница, как они отличаются друг от друга. Потому что часто перепутывают даже носители. Вот. Even natives get these two confused. Okay. Приискать, to look for, and then you've got dative happening here because you're looking for something for somebody. Woo-woo, last page. Here we go. Новое место. So look for a new place for her to work. Так, новое место. We're getting neuter, accusative, and it doesn't change. It's not animate, it's not feminine, it doesn't need to change. Вот. Пол ушел вчера с двора во время самого обеда. Черная кухарка и кучер просили расчета. Так. Again, this word, and maybe this word especially we don't really use in speech today. Paul, the chef, left yesterday, вчера, from, look at this saying in Old Russian, if there were any 2 consonants together next to it, you would have used "o." Now the rule is only if the consonants are the "z" or "z." But in olden times, um, you if there were any 2 consonants together, you would both I see some, um malay iba ere. Inquire would ask for something. So, paparazzi means to ask for something. Например, денег, помощи. What was the one? Новая uh, and раз это вопрос. Inquiring, you're asking about something for information. Молодец, хорошо. Молодец. Так, from yard, maybe, or from the guest house kind of thing? Yard, guest house. So he's left, he moved out, and during Volpina, so that literally means at the time, but I would translate it as during, like, right in the middle of lunch, right in the middle of lunch, right in the middle, so that's how I'm gonna translate this. Во время самого so, like, the was like, "Screw this," and just left right in the middle of lunch, yeah? Чёрная кухарка, this is a hard one. It's like a kitchen maid. This is not a job you want. Повар is much more respectable. Черная кухарка is she does all the dirty work in the kitchen. Вот. So during lunch, the kitchen maid and the coachman, right? Coachman, we don't have that in modern English really, but probably the person that was driving the, спасибо вам, так. So yeah, the person that was driving the carriage. And then you also had, like, the footman as well, and in old in old Russian, you would have had all of these words. In English, we had all these words, but we just don't use them anymore. Oh, look at there again, Aaron, there's просили, просили. They asked for, not for information, but for something. They asked for what? Their paycheck. Okay, as you can see, everybody is excited to get out of this house because it's a mess. Because Jopa cheated on his wife, and now it's complete and total chaos. Anna, very shortly after this, Anna Karenina is gonna come to help out her brother Stjopa to try and help him calm down Raleigh, to try and help him put his life back together. But he's gonna cheat again. That's all he does. He cheats all the time, and his life is in a total state of chaos. Also, the Oblonskis are not good with their money, and they're gonna start having a lot of financial problems as well. So let's do the grammar on this little bit, and then I will just give you I won't give any spoilers on Anna Karenina, but I'll give you a few things to look for as you read the book. So, what? Over, nominative, because he's the sentence or the subject of the sentence. From uitsi, that's our masculine past tense of uitsi, on ushol. No change here. This is actually genitive. It's not. Sometimes when we see su, we immediately think it's with. No, sometimes su can be genitive, and we know it's genitive because of this ending. And he's leaving from the guest house. During the time, at the time, and then we've got an of in here, which is why we're getting these genitive endings. Samova обеда. So the original of this would be sami обед, but we're getting of, making it need a genitive case. Черная кухарка, all nominative, feminine, because she's the subject. И кучер, he's also nominative. Past tense of просить, they ask for, and then a lot of times просить gets paired with genitive. Not always, but a lot of times. So расчет is the original of this, and it's getting genitive because you ask for it. That's one way to explain it. So, oh my goodness. Woohoo! And that's only the first paragraph of a 1,200-page book. So I don't think I can do the rest of the book for today, but I hope you enjoyed it. I'm telling you, Russian, uh, reading Russian literature is just so amazing. It's actually not that difficult. If you have somebody holding your hand and helping you make sense of it, It's actually very doable. Next week, we're going to do the final famous paragraph of "Мертвые души," Dead Souls by Nikolai Gogol, who's actually one of my favorite, authors. I just love his books. Real quick, Erin, you wanted me to explain why "s" got genitive case. Okay, so did you know a lot of Russian, uh, prepositions can actually be have meanings just depending on which case they get paired with. So, for example, "the" and "na" can be, if they get prepositional, they mean "at" or "in." If they get accusative, they mean "to." Okay? "Za" and "tod," if they get, uh, accusative, they mean behind, to go behind, and they mean to go under. And if they get incidental, they mean to be located behind, to be located under. And then "for" is the same way. If you put it with instrumental, it means with. If you put it with genitive, it means from. Okay? And "s" is the opposite of "na." Okay? What do I mean by that? If you say, "I am at work," "Я на работе," right? "Я на работе." Now, if you want to say, "I just returned from work," then you wouldn't use "is." You have to pair anything that got "на" in prepositional case, you have to pair it with "с." "Я только что вернулась с работы." Same thing, that's why, um, you'd say something like, in the old days, some people would say that they live na Ukrainie, and then if you ask them, "Откуда вы?" They would say something like, "Я с Украины, я с Украины." Because if they believe that when you say in Ukraine, it's na Ukraine, then to say I'm from Ukraine, they would say я с Украины, с Украиной. I don't hear very many Ukrainians using that anymore, not the Ukrainians I talk to. But here, I'll tell you a really awkward, story. One time, my friend's dad, so my almost father-in-law, he said, "Мы только что вернулись с Peskova," right? So from the city of Pskov. And I was like, Валентин Васильевич, почему вы сказали с Пескова? Я не знала, что так можно. Я думала, что, разве вы говорите на Пскове? Like, do you say we are in Pskov? You say на Pskovе? And he's like, oh, like, so I had to call a native out on his wrong grammar, and it was very awkward. So anyway, that's the difference there. And then I have another question here. Мертвые души в России школьники читают. Думаете, студентам тоже сойдет? Yes, "Мертвые души" is amazing. I don't know why. I mean, for us, it's very appropriate to read it in college because it's foreign literature. It's a very foreign concept, and actually Gogol is difficult, and there's a lot of symbolism in Dead Souls, but you really would only read it in a Russian literature classroom. You would very rarely read it in, like, world literature class. It would only be in a Russian literature classroom. So, in the West, not very many people know Gogol, unfortunately, but he is brilliant. So, хорошо, это всё. На следующей неделе, next week, we are going to do "Мертвые души," the famous last paragraph of Dead Souls from Gogol. Gogol is so brilliant. I love him so much. I love him as a person, and I love his works as well. So, хорошо. Я надеюсь, что это было интересно. Again, let me know if there are any excerpts from Russian literature you would love to get some grammar explanation on. Это всё. Спасибо вам большое. И, не забывайте, don't forget to come back on Thursday for the explanation of participles. They are super cool in Russian. So, хорошо, это всё. Целую вас всех. Спасибо вам. До свидания.